So we had a chance to sit down and talk with Indiana Attorney General Curtis Hill. He graces us with his presence today. Curtis, my friend, how's everything going?
Abdul, it's going great. Having an exciting spring. Been traveling across the state of Indiana, meeting people, talking issues, and so things are going really, really well.
When you get outside the 465 bubble, obviously, as you all know, there's stuff we talk about inside this political circle. What are people talking about who live out in what I call the real world, which is outside of the State House and Government Center?
Well, the real world is very, very different. They talk about concerns that they have in their own neighborhoods, in their own communities, and it's really refreshing. We've gone everywhere from the state line of Michigan down to the Ohio River and all points in between, and folks are really happy with the economy. They're concerned about various issues. They're still concerned about the drug crisis and how it impacts their particular community. And what I find is that each individual community has to deal with it in their own way. Even though we're one state, we're made up of a variety of different communities that have to address their concerns in that different manner. So it's fun, it's refreshing, it's great to get out there and meet with people, ask them what's on their mind, and see what we can do to help.
Well, let's start with some of the big news items that came out this week. One of which was Indiana joined a number of other states, going after some of the pharmaceutical companies on price fixing. It looks like price collusion.
Yeah, healthcare is a big issue in this country, and most people think that it's only at the national level. And the reality is, we here at the state level have a great deal of responsibility in this area. And one of those areas is in making sure that prices for drugs are controlled and contained. And prices can be high enough. And there's some appropriate reasons for having a higher price. Pharmaceutical companies do a lot of research. So it's certainly appropriate to look at building in research prices into their cost structure. But this is different. The lawsuit that we joined 43 other states in really focuses on the collusion, if you will, of various companies and leadership within companies to actually set about fixing prices and driving profits, sometimes as much as 1,000% over what it should be. Because
if I read some of the news release correctly this morning, one of the things that they would do is get together and, hey, here's what I'm charging. Well, hey, here's what I'm charging. People actually allegedly, at least according to the complaint, write this stuff down on a sheet of paper and just sort of trade prices back and forth.
Well, and last time I checked, that's not the right thing to do. You should be determining your prices based on sound business practices, not how can we inflate the cost and then make sure that we have it covered because you inflated it, I inflated it, so we inflate it together and that makes it right. No, that makes it wrong. And this is the type of thing that I think it irks the consumer. It should, because it's really problematic. The level of prices for prescription drugs and medications, it's already sky high. So taking it even that further, it's unconscionable, and that's what our lawsuit's about.
Now, just for folks in our audience to know, what do people draw the line between, price fixing versus, hey, I saw what Curtis is charging for cheeseburgers across the street, I'm going to charge, the same price?
Well, you're talking about an active engagement of coming together for that purpose. It's one thing if you have the gas station across the street and you see that they have a longer line of cars than you have, and you see what their prices are. Well, that's competition, and that's a fair way of doing it. It's not like you picked up the phone and called the guy across the street and said, hey, I'll charge $4 a gallon if you charge $4 a gallon, and we'll both screw everybody together. That's the difference. Healthy competition, that's what America's about. This is not competition. This is price fixing and collusion.
We're taking a moment to get caught up with Indiana Attorney General Curtis Hill. Some things have been going on in the office that impact folks across the state of Indiana. Another thing that was big, I want to say last week, was going after Equifax and the consumer data breach and a lot of people's personal, private information. I know because I was technically one of them, because one day I went to use my debit card to go buy cigars and other stuff, and it didn't work, and that was not a very good day.
Well, that probably wasn't the data breach. That was probably you. That's a whole different matter.
Which is about right.
Well, with Equifax, we had a serious breach. You'll recall a couple of years ago, they announced in September of 2017 that they had experienced a data breach that had impacted 143 million people. That's a huge number. But that's also 4 million, nearly 4 million Hoosiers. And for us, that's a huge number. So we set about an investigation to determine what, if anything, could have been prevented and how was their response. I want to make it an important point. In this environment, the way that we are with data and technology, data breaches are going to occur. That's a given. And so it's not our responsibility in the state of Indiana to, or not our desire, for that matter, in the state of Indiana to penalize everybody who has a data breach. What we look for is what types of things were you doing as a company to ensure or to prevent a data breach? And once it occurred, what types of things did you do to try to make it right for the consumer? So there are certainly circumstances where a company can experience a data breach and not have the wrath of the state of Indiana on their back. In this particular instance, our investigation determined that there were a variety of warnings and preventative measures that Equifax could have taken and chose not to for the sake of profits. That's detailed greatly in our complaint. And maybe as importantly or more importantly, if you look at what happened after the disclosure, and the disclosure was some months after the event itself. So that kept consumers unaware that they were exposed. Once it was announced, we also saw a pattern of disregard for the types of things that you would do to assist the consumers. And so it was on those 2 points that we determined that the best approach for us would be to file a lawsuit to hold them accountable.
So how does a place like an Equifax get held accountable for its actions?
You got to hit them in the pocketbook. You have to hit them with a lawsuit for civil damages, an injunction to keep them from doing this type of behavior over and over again. That's where it comes to play.